Welcome back to Huawei Routing and Switching Elite Training for HCIE. Today topic we are going to discuss on WAN Layer 2 technologies. Let's start our part 5.
Okay, so let me go into the R3. So R3 will be my hub. Alright, so I have one sub interface as point to multi-point and another sub interface as point to point. Alright, so let me go into the interface serial 100. Okay, so which is this interface 100. I need to configure the link type as a frame relay because default link protocol is PPP. Okay, so it asks me saying that do you really want to change to frame relay? I'll just say yes. Okay, that's it. So display this. You can see that now it's an FR. Now it's time for us to create a sub interface. So let me go back into the main system view interface serial 100 dot. I'm going to create the sub interface 1 and I'm going to do a point to multi-point. Okay, so this is a point to multi-point. So you have two options over here. This is what the question required. I'm going to configure the IP address. So the IP address in this case is 13.113.24. Okay, so that's it. Very simple. Now more importantly is that the IP address that I'm going to map is on R1 and I do have a DLCI. Now before I move on, still remember that the question asks us to undo the inverse ARP. Okay, so let me do a display frame relay PVC info. I'll show you here. As you can see that I have two DLCI 301 and 302. As you can see that it's active. The reason it's active is because that is enabled for inverse up. Now the question specifically said that inverse up is supposed to be disabled. Alright, so remember to disable this inverse up. Okay, undo frame relay inverse up. Okay, now I need to go back to my interface serial 100.1. Okay, so since early on I already configured this as point to multi-point, so I do not need to specify point to multi-point one more time. So I do a frame relay map IP. The IP address that I'm going to map is the remote IP. Now remember that current IP that I have is 13.113, which is myself. So I need to map to remote IP using the current DLC. The current DLC I'm going to map will be 301, and followed by the broadcast because this one is my point to multi-point. That's all I need to configure. Alright, frame relay map IP 13.111.301 broadcast. Now another interface that I need to configure based on the requirement is to configure sub interface point to point. So I'm going to configure serial 1/0/0.2. Okay, this time I'm going to do a P2P point to point. Enter. I'm going to configure my IP address, which is 23.1.1.3.24. Okay, now this time because this is a point to point, I do not need to do any mapping as its name suggests it's point to point. But I do need to configure my DLCI, and for you to do that, you just do a frame relay DLCI, and the DLCI number that I'm using is 302. Okay, so I have here the both the interfaces already configured. All right, on the sub interfaces. So 13.113 and 23.113, and you can see that the interface is up. And when I do a display frame relay PVC info, okay, you can see that the inverse up is disabled. The status is active. You also can do a display frame relay LMI. Okay, so this is for my LMI status and it is running. Now I need to configure both R1 and R2. So let me go into R1 now, system view. That is in my interface serial 100. I need to configure that into the link protocol as my FR. Okay, and yes, and always remember that I need to follow the question. The question said that the inverse up supposed to be undo FR inverse ARP. Okay, I'm going to configure that in the interface here. The IP address for this guy is 13.1.1.3. Sorry, .1.1.1.24. Alright, .3 is our hub. Okay, then I'm going to configure the frame relay map IP. Remember, the IP address that you are going to map is the remote IP. So the IP address on R3 is 13.1.1.3, and the DLCI that I'm using here is 103, using a broadcast statement because this is point to multi-point. So if I do a display FR map info, you'll notice that the IP address is 13.113. That's the remote. The current PVC that I'm using is 103. You also can do a display FR PVC info. Alright, so I have 103 as my DLCI. The status is active. The inverse up has been disabled. So we can try to do a ping to 13.1.1.3. Okay, as you can see, that is pingable. Alright, and lastly, I'm going to configure the R2. So for R2, alright, we are going to configure the IP address as in 23.1.1.2. So we can actually configure sub interface for this. Alright, so go into the interface serial 100. Okay, link protocol frame relay. Yes. Undo frame relay inverse ARP. Okay, display this. So these are the command in S00. I'm going to create a sub interface S100.1 point to point. Okay, and this is where I'm going to configure the IP 23.1.1.2 24. Alright, no need to do the frame relay map, but you do need to configure the DLCI that is being assigned to you. Alright, so for my case here, I know that this is 203. That's it. You can see that now it's actually turned in from the inactive to the active. Alright, so let me double check for here. Display frame relay PVC info to show you the DLCI number. Okay, this is the number that I mapped just now. Okay, 203, and I also show you here is inverse up disable, status is active. Next, I'm going to do a display frame relay map info. As you can see that this is point to point. Okay, so no mapping is required, as its name suggests it's point to point. So let me do a ping to 23.1.1.3. There you go. All right, so I can able to ping to the hub. All right, so here we have completed the configuration on both the spoke R1, R2. The top here R1 and R3 using point to multi-point, and at the bottom here we are using point to point. Okay, and this is R3, and finally I just do a frame relay map info, and as you can see that they are active. All right, now we move on to the layer 2 troubleshooting. All right, so we just complete all the configuration just now. Now on the troubleshooting, we look into the overview. All right, so just now we look into the PPP, we look into PPPoE, we look into the frame relay. All right, so all this require you to know the technology very well. So on the high level, the protocol status of PPP interface changed to down. So what you can do, all right, check the PPP configuration. Remember that the link of both sides have to be up, all right, and the authentication problem. So the authentication mode must match. For example, you cannot do a chat with a PEP authentication. The password must be matched. If you do configure MP mode, make sure that the MP has been configured properly as well. So the physical state must be up. All right, just do a display interface on your serial interface and check whether the interface can properly send and receive protocol packet to a display interface serial. And they also may have a loop. All right, so if let's say you have somehow get a Wireshark, all right, you're able to see that if let's say there's a loop, the magic number that is detected will tell you that the serial link have a loop. Now for your exam preparation, it's very critical for you to understand the frame relay. okay, because the frame relay is your core technology that you are going to build your layer 2. Right, so when you configure, all right, when you do your configuration, make sure you master the PPP, especially the understanding the concept of PPP, the authentication, the MPPPP, the PPPoE. All right, so it depends. All right, so whether you will get it in your interview or not. So PPPoE is very popular, especially in the DSL technology. Frame relay is a must, and you have to practice the frame relay very often. So familiar with all this technology. If you can't remember the command, there's always headaches in your exam for you to refer. So please refer into your headaches and do all the example in your headaches. All right, it will help you during your exam. All right, master the display and the debugging. There's a general advice, and understand all the case scenario that I present in this video. Okay, so that's all for this topic, and I thank you for viewing my video.
Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel.